major setback for the makers of Vijay-starrer Jana Nayagan. The Supreme Court has now dismissed the plea filed by KVN Productions seeking immediate CBFC clearance for the movie. The apex court has asked the producers to replace all their arguments before the division bench of the Madras High Court. The Supreme Court has also directed Madras High Court to make an effort to hear and decide the appeal by 20th of January. For now, no relief has been granted and the spotlight shifts firmly to the Madras High Court. To recap, the makers submitted Jana Nayagan for certification in December last year, and CBFC's examining committee had agreed to grant the film a UA 16+ certificate subject to certain modification. A revised version was submitted on 24th of December. However, on 5th of Jan, the CBFC chairperson referred the movie, to a revising committee after receiving a complaint on the matter. The complaint flagged the presence of certain emblems which are linked to armed forces, stating that they require expert examination. On 9th of Jan, a single judge of the Madras High Court directed CBFC to issue certification without further delay, and that order was challenged by the censor board on the very same day. Subsequently, the division bench stayed the directive, noting that CBFC had not been given adequate time to present its case. All eyes are now on 20th of January hearing at the Madras High Court. And it's a setback for the Vijay-starrer Jana Nayagan. The Supreme Court has now dismissed the plea filed by KVN Productions, which sought immediate CBFC clearance for the movie. The apex court has asked the producers to place all their arguments back at the division bench of the Madras High Court. So the matter goes back now to the Madras High Court from Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has directed Madras High Court to make an effort to hear and decide on the plea by 20th of January. So it's a temporary setback there for Vijay's Jana Nayagan. All right, Vijay's last movie there facing another hurdle as the Supreme Court has now dismissed the plea which was filed by KVN Productions regarding CBFC certification for the movie. The apex court has asked the producers to place all their arguments back before the division bench of the Madras High Court, which has been directed by the Supreme Court to make an effort to hear the plea by 20th of January. So no relief for now for Jana Nayagan, and the spotlight has now shifted back to Madras High Court. Now remember, the makers of Jana Nayagan submitted the movie before CBFC in December last year. The examining committee of CBFC agreed to grant the movie a UA 16+ certificate subject to certain modification. So a revised version was submitted on 24th of December yet again, but on 5th of January, CBFC referred the movie to a revising committee after receiving a complaint which flagged the presence of certain emblems linked to armed forces, stating that they require examination. So on 9th of Jan, the single bench of Madras High Court directed CBFC to issue certification, but that order was further challenged by the censor board. My colleague Thoya Jakshi tracking all those details, joining us live on the show. Thoya, it does appear right now that Jana Nayagan has hit a fresh hurdle up until 20th of January, which is when the Madras High Court will once again hear film production and their plea to give it a UA certification.
Well, Shweta, the film's production company KVN Productions filed an urgent petition in the Supreme Court challenging the interim stay granted by the Madras High Court in the Jana Nayagan censor case, where the case came up for the hearing today before the bench of Justice Deepankar Dutt and Augustine George. A senior advocate Mukul Rotogi, appearing for the producers, argued the film was supposed to release on the January 9th in 5,000 theatres were allotted for it across India. It was said that the certificate would be issued with 10 cuts. And however, the bench of the judges who refused to hear the petition stated that the following: when an order has already been quashed, it cannot be challenged here. But now the division bench of the Madras High Court is scheduled to hear this case on the January 20th. So, you should go there. That's what the Chief Justice of Supreme Court has stated. There is no need to show any such urgency. This is also been stated where Justice Deepankar Dutt is in his comments, he sarcastically remarked that the speed with which the petition was being resolved within a few days of its filing was astonishing. The argument of the board of auditors were also where the film censor board had already filed a petition in the Supreme Court requesting that no order be passed without hearing their side. Now, the censor board's main argument in that the film contains scenes related to the military symbols, defense symbols, and something related to the religion sentiment as well. And they should be examined by the panel of experts. This was also stated. But today, when we see that the Supreme Court has set the, in its order, it has also stated that the Supreme Court refuses to interfere at this stage on the appeal by the Jana Nayagan producers. Direct that the producer of KVN Production to argue their case before the Madras High Court division bench. So now the Supreme Court also asked the division bench of the Madras High Court to hear the appeal on the January 20th. So we'll have to wait and see what kind of order will the Madras High Court given this matter, Shweta.
All right, Tejakshi, before I let you go, I think let's quickly rewind it for our viewers as to where the controversy really lies. And the controversy at this point lies with certain emblems that the movie is showing, which experts believe in the CBFC would require a further examination, for these emblems belong to the army. And that's where the contention is, and that contention hasn't been solved, and that's the reason why the movie's release has hit another obstruction.
Of course, let me give you a small background of from where all these controversies started, Shweta. First of all, there was scenes which affected, the religious sentiments in this film, particularly in Jana Nayagan, where another, where they were asking the scenes to remove is because there were several defense-related symbols were also used in this film. This film is directed by Vinod. This is Vijay's last film. It was scheduled to be released on January 9th. However, this release was postponed after the censor board refused to issue the certificate for this film. Earlier, the single judge of the Madras High Court had also ordered the film to be given a UA certificate. However, after the censor board appealed against this order, the two-judge bench of the High Court granted an interim stay on this single judge's order and adjourned the hearing of the case to the January 21st. That is right after the Pongal vacation. Here, both censor, CBFC, as well as the KVN production team of Jana Nayagan, filed a petition in the Supreme Court. But today, the Supreme Court has given an order that, the KVN production has to go towards what the division bench of the Madras High Court says on the January 20th. So we'll have to wait and see what exact order will be issued in Jana Nayagan's censor certificate case.